You know, whenever you have an historic meeting such as this, I think it's very important for people to be honest and open about themselves, about their feelings, about their pain. And I've just been taught to do that. But we now have pain we're dealing with, you know, our individual baggage that we can help. That is what we really need to be focusing on in order to help each other move forward.
One thing that's good about the people that came is that we're all adults. And if you are an adult, then you do try to respect other people if you've been raised to do that. So even though you get angry, you do have respect for other people's ideas.
Ashamed?
Ashamed of what?
Ashamed that your great-grandfather?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel ashamed that your great-grandfather was a slave? Is there shame?
No. No, there's no shame. There's a lot of pride. Pride that he survived. Pride that all of them who lived survived. And pride in those who didn't survive. Because how can you be ashamed when they weren't at fault?
But can you see where someone might be ashamed?
Of the fact that their family came from slaves? No, I can't. Personally, I can't.
I mean, if you're black and in America, you automatically assume that you came out of slavery sometime in your life, and that to some degree you're still living in some form of slavery.
Well, I always assumed that all black people were slaves a long time ago, and that basically that all black people hated all white people for that reason.
I think there is some anger that has more to do with racism today than slavery yesterday. But I didn't really realize that I had a lot of anger, or that I had any anger for that matter. You know, I grew up, wonderful childhood, wonderful parents, so I didn't realize that I had any anger. But what I found out from doing that project is that I had internalized my genealogy search. And so I was feeling the pain of my ancestors, that I had internalized what happened to my, my slave ancestor who had her children sold. And I was internalizing the fact that, that my father fought in World War II, but he had to fight in an all-colored unit. And I was, internalizing all that pain. So it was there. I just was not consciously aware of it. And it came out in the event, and so that was a surprise. But the fact that it came out allowed me to deal with it and to move on.
I asked you before, Vera, about the shame, and I wanted to explain why, because you seemed a little surprised. And the reason why I asked that was really more personal. My mother was in Auschwitz, and my father was in Buchenwald and other concentration camps, and I never thought about it being shameful. I felt like you did. No, they survived. I felt proud. But my husband, the other facilitator here, you all know that Dan Jacko is my husband. When we first met, he would ask me lots of questions. And, that was one of the questions he asked me. And I remember when he asked it, I was actually angry. Well, no, I'm not ashamed. I mean, I'm proud, And it was much later that I really began to reflect on that. So that was why I asked you that. I didn't mean to make you feel shameful.
Was there perhaps a relationship with your ancestors and perhaps with your ancestors 100, 200 years ago? What do you think the relationship might have been, John?
Before I came up here, I made a call to my grandmother. She lives in Augusta, Georgia. Some of you aren't going to believe this, I'm sure, but it was, with her, with her parents and grandparents, that the relationship was generally a good relationship. The slaves trusted their masters, that because of that, basically for providing for them as far as shops and shelter, whatever.
I couldn't understand it, that providing for a person made it right, that they couldn't have existed without the providing of the slaveholder. Was kind of
we were actually doing a favor,
yeah.
Which is not right.
I've heard a few people say that I have to prove that I'm not racist, or I have to sweep my past under the rug, and slavery was legal. I'm not saying that it was completely right, it wasn't, you know, and I don't think there's anyone in here that will say that slavery was right, but it was legal for them to do that.
When you say it's legally, it was legal. Who made the law?
Well, the government made the law, but it was still legal. Nobody would go to jail for beating a slave. Nobody.
This is when we get to the issue, Lisa, of difficult perspectives.
So for me to be ashamed of that aspect of it, of something that, because my family, my ancestor just did something that was legal. You know, I can't.
I mean, I heard the same thing from descendants of Nazis. Nazism was legal too. But beyond.
I think that it's somewhat of a stereotype on slavery to think that slave owners always beat their slaves, and they were always chained and whipped. I think that's a large stereotype, and if anything, we should try to break that stereotype.
I think one of the realities that we forget is that not only did they get beaten, but more importantly, someone had the power to do so.
I really do understand what hearing this perspective brings up, because I've been through this similar experience. So I don't mean to cut you off. We're going to get into it. And I'm glad that there are these different perspectives, because this isn't a social conversation. We really do want to get down to the different points of views. That's a point of view.
I think what kind of provoked me to just go and say what I felt right then and there was when Jim had said, right off the bat, I'm sorry, I'm ashamed of what my family did, and I want to apologize to you. And he was asked, you know, one of the black participants asked him to apologize, and he just did it like that. And that struck me as a sign of weakness. And so I just thought it was ridiculous. And I thought, then what am I doing here? You know, this isn't the issue. You know, it's not that easy for them to say, apologize, for me to say, okay, I'm sorry, and then that's the end of it. So I knew that, you know, when it came to me, and I think that Dr. Weissmark had an idea right off the bat that I wasn't politically correct, and that I'm an individual apart from my family and my history, but I also carry that with me at the same time, and that I don't conform. You know, I'm open-minded, and she saved me for last. And it did get a lot worse before it got better, and now it's a lot better. When we had to go around the circle and talk about, you know, what we got out of it, what kind of baggage we brought in there with us, and what are we going to leave with, basically. I told them that I came with ignorance and apathy, and I'm leaving with compassion and love. And I told them that I came with my history, and I'm leaving with their history.